In this video, I want to give you a short overview about the ClusterCockpit web interface. ClusterCockpit is a job-specific performance monitoring framework. It's intended to be used by administrators, by support personnel, and also by regular HPC users. So this is a login screen. Okay, so let's enter here my username and my password and log in. This is the first view you get, so the index page. What you can see is a list of clusters and a column with a direct link to the running jobs. You can see how many jobs are currently running on the different systems. Then you have direct links to the total jobs list, and finally direct links to a status view and to a system view, and we come to that later. So first look at some of the running job lists. Let's just click on it. You get then the job list. This is a view that's used at various places in ClusterCockpit. First column, you get the job metadata, and you see the basic resource utilization. For example, this is a shared single node job. You see which node it is, using 1 GPU, 16 cores, and it is on the A40 partition. And then you have a list of metric plots. You can configure which metric plots you want to see in this job list, and this is also saved then for each individual user of ClusterCockpit. You have various possibilities here to sort and filter the list. So for example, let's sort it according to the duration. Default is to show the newest jobs first. So this is what we get. That are the longest jobs. Yeah, just pick one job. You can already see here that some of the plots have a colored background, and ClusterCockpit colors the background if a certain lower threshold is, if the average metric value is below a certain threshold that was configured before. You can also see this line here is a bit thin here, but this is a performance that is regarded to be the normal performance. Yeah, and the idea here is that by putting this line in here, as you can see, all plots have the same Y range, and so this allows you to compare different jobs, yeah, even if they have different values, because the range here is always the same. So this job is colored orange or yellow because the average is below a configured threshold. There is also red. Let's see if there is a red job. No, here, no. Oh, here is one. So if there is really a very, very low average performance, then it's colored red. That just to put your attention on that you probably should have a look at that. Okay, so let's click on that job. When you click on the job, you get to the job list, and the job list shows you the metadata again. Then for shared jobs, so for jobs running on the same node with other jobs, you see a list of all jobs that also were running on the same node during this, in this case, 23 hours. And you can see here, see all is a job list with all those jobs. Then you have a polar plot, we call this. This is not very interesting here in that case, but here you can configure different metrics and you see the average and the max of those metrics. And so you can see at once what resources the job were using. And then finally the roofline plot where every data point of every node or core is plotted in here. In this case, it's not interesting because the job resources utilization was so low that it doesn't even show up here. In the job view, you see more metrics than in the job list. You essentially see all metrics that are configured. Of course, again, you can configure that. Yeah, so you can enable or disable metrics. So in case you don't want to see some metrics. So let's have a look here, for example, core power. So here in this metric block, for example, you can see that there's quite some lines here and you don't see much because it's so volatile. So what you can do is you can zoom in Still not very interesting, but there is the option to zoom in, and by double clicking the plot you can zoom out again. Finally, at the bottom there is a statistics table. In this case, because a shared job, it shows you all the cores. You can sort according to min, average, and max. This is not shown here for memory bandwidth and CPU load because those are not available at the core granularity. You will see later in a multi-node job that then here the nodes will show up and it's much more interesting. And finally, you can also see the job script. So let's go back to our initial view. And now let's look at some multi-node jobs. So let's look at Fritz, our general purpose cluster. And let's sort again according to the runtime, so the duration. And well, here now we see those are all single jobs. Okay, let's filter. So we can filter, and let's say, for example, in resources, let's have a look at jobs using from, well, let's use 7 to 16 nodes. Okay. And for example, this one was using 8 nodes, 10 nodes. Let's have a look at this job. And here you can see there's probably some molecular dynamics code, I guess. Use 10 nodes. And now you see in the roof line, this is a special job because very stable performance, and all the nodes roughly perform the same. And so you see all the points are here, and this is quite some very high performance here in this roofline diagram. This roof here is the sequential peak performance for one node, and this is the SIMD peak performance. Well, otherwise there is little to say here apart from you could also here now, of course, zoom in. And you can also here select specific nodes if you want, just to have a look at one node. Okay, so that's it for the job list and the job view. Of course, you can also do a lot more sophisticated filtering, so all you want to do. Next thing I want to show you is the users view. In the users view, you get a list of users defaulted of the last 30 days, and default is sorted by the number of total jobs, but of course you can sort it about the total wall time consumed, total core hours, or total accelerator hours. When you then click on, and well, this is scrambled of course for the sake of the presentation here, so usually here you can also see a name. If you click on a user, then you can see basic statistics like the total jobs in a certain time, how many short jobs there were. For example, here this user seems to have a lot of jobs that are way too short, 24 seconds, and the total wall time. Let's go back and pick some more interesting user. For example, let's filter for a cluster like Fritz here. And let's have a look at this guy. It's also all single node. So you see we have a lot of single node workloads, I hope. Let's go back again and choose one, or choose users, wait a moment, that use more than one node. I hope something like that is available here. So let's choose more than 5 nodes. And have a look at, well, let's choose this one. So now that looks better. So you have the username, total jobs, short jobs, and the total wall time. And then you have 2 histograms. One is about the duration of the job, so the how long a job was running. Of course, for the running jobs, that only takes into account the current duration. So you see most of the jobs here were running around 3 hours. And then you can see the node distribution. So this guy were some of the jobs used 16 or in this case 15 nodes and some 29. So let's look at a job here. And now you can also see here, depending on how many lines are shown, we show the actual values like the cores or the nodes, or we show statistics. Like here is 29 nodes, that would be a lot of lines. And so here we show just min, max, and mean for all those nodes. And of course it says here what is shown. So, and also, yeah, that's also quite interesting in that case. That's part of an array job. So you could click here on the array job and then see all the jobs that belong to this specific array job. So let's click on the job here. And that looks more interesting now here. So you can see now in the polar plot, and you also see it in the roofline, that this job was using really a significant portion of the bandwidth. So it's very close to the bandwidth limit. And he also was using quite some memory, so like here, close to 160 gigabytes per node. Yeah, otherwise, here now the statistic table is also now showing all the nodes. And what is quite interesting or worthwhile to do is, for example, sort for the average. And there you can see, I mean, in this case, it's not the case, but if there are some performance classes, yeah, of course, here, this is again the average. Of course, different nodes have different averages, but they are not exactly the same, but also not pathological different. ClusterCockpit also has the option to tag jobs. We don't do that a lot here at our side. But just for the sake of the presentation, for example, I could say here, I want to add a tag like bottleneck, and he will either create the tag or show you the tags that are available. And so here, for example, bottleneck bandwidth limited, let's apply this tag, and then it has this tag. And then you can, of course, sort for the, search for the tag, show all jobs that have this tag, and so on. Okay, so let's go back to the index view and let's have a look at the status view. The status view is a kind of management view, you could say, showing you the overall information about the current state of the cluster. So for example, how many nodes are currently allocated of the total nodes, what's the flop rate, and what's the memory bandwidth. And this is a bit buggy yet. Yeah, still a bit buggy, unfortunately. Here you see all nodes plotted in a roofline diagram. So the latest value reported by every node, you can see at which operating point the cluster is operated. So a lot of jobs are using significant amount of memory, but there are also really a lot of nodes that run with very high flop rates. Yeah, those are usually at our side molecular dynamics codes. Here for those, unfortunately, hyper performance monitoring data is not yet available, and so there we cannot show the roofline. And then you see here pie charts with users, and you can then have the top users, for example, the users using most nodes, yeah, or the users with most jobs or cores, yeah, and the same for projects. And then a number of different histograms, duration histogram currently, then the number of nodes that are used, the number of cores, and the accelerators. Of course, here we don't have any accelerator, so there's a 0 here. Okay, then another thing is this systems view, and let's have a look at, let's have a look again on Fritz. That takes a while here because here now all nodes are shown. So this is now a view for administrators, for example, where not job-specific data is shown, but a list of nodes is shown. And you can, of course, then switch for different metrics. and scrolls through the nodes. You can filter through the nodes. You can click on the node, and then you get all the metrics for this node. Yeah. And finally, here at the top, you see what jobs are running on the node. Currently, only one node. Well, Fritz is exclusive, so there can only be run one job at a time. So there is running one job on this node. And finally, what I want to show you is the analysis view. Here you can, and I hope this works. This is a bit fragile still. You can click yourself different views. Yeah. So, for example, histograms and also those aggregated statistic plots for different metrics. Yeah. For example, here is the normalized hours against the mem used maximum. Yeah, to see how many memory jobs usually use. Yeah, and there are different options you have here. Now, finally, also something you can use is here this unified search bar. So what you can do is you can search for a project ID, for a job ID, a job name, an array job ID, a username, or a clear text name. Yeah? So you can have a one shot at a job and just search for something. Yeah. So let's try to search for me. That's my user ID here. And well, and then you see I don't have a lot of jobs, but you directly come then to the user, and this works, of course, for those other search terms too. Now, finally, you can configure stuff. Yeah, so yeah, you can configure the line width, the plots, if the background is colored or not. There are different color schemes, and of course, this is then persisted or saved per user. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That gives you a rough idea what ClusterCockpit can do. And yeah, I hope this raised your interest, and just try it out. There is a demo available that's pretty easy to set up and use with some mock-up data. And so you can make an impression yourself. Thank you.